Welcome. My name is Edris Harrell, and on behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, I welcome those of you here in the sanctuary, especially the children, and those of you online to our worship service. All are welcome, regardless of how you experience love, how you see yourself, and how you see the divine. Today, we will reflect on Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of the beloved community. Let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship, starting with the children's choir.
We're ready. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
You guys walk down. Please come around here. One goes around here. There's only one way forward.
What a great way to begin our service. Thank you, Children's Choir. That was fabulous. So I'm the Reverend Larry Piers, minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, and I've assigned a few people during this time of the call to worship to pass around some yarn so that we can make visible our interconnectedness with one another. Down the rows, across the rows, down the aisles, Just pass it on, take a piece and pass it down to someone else. There you go. Let's create that web. Just keep passing it on. Okay, yeah. Oh, she's going to go up here. Okay. All right. All right, just pass it on. Yeah. Okay, great. So, in his speech before hundreds of Unitarian Universalists gathering for a national conference in 1966, Martin Luther King Jr. shared these words about his understanding about what it means for us to be human. And he expressed a conviction about how our destiny, our well-being, is connected to the destiny and well-being of all. He said, all I'm saying is that all life is interrelated. And somehow we are all tied together, all connected to one another. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, he said. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of all reality. And so what we have done with this yarn is to make that interconnection that's always there just a little visible to one another this morning. So as we join together in worship, let us first pause to recognize this connection that we have with one another, our interrelationship, and our shared destiny. Come, let us worship together.
To our live stream viewers, if you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join us by lighting it as I read these words by James Villa Blake. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Please rise, embody your spirit, and sing hymn number 131, if you can. Love will guide us. And following the hymn, remain standing for the unison affirmation. And now, please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through through loving action.
Okay. Hair's untangled, ready to go. This month, our theme is liberating love. To help us understand the idea of liberating love, I'm going to share the parable of the river. Long, long ago, there was a small village on the edge of a beautiful river. The people there lived in harmony with nature and each other. Life in the village was good. Now, one day, a villager began his early morning stroll, and he noticed that the once vibrant river looked slightly murkier than normal and contained some sludge and pollution resting on the banks. The villager quickly went out of his way to clear the pollution and restore the flow of the river. He thought all was well, but the next day, the same villager noticed 2 lifeless fish in the river. He scooped them out of the water and again thought all was well. But the following day, the debris started to build up again, and the river's flow became constricted, cutting off water to the village. Naturally, the villagers organized themselves quickly, setting up watchtowers and training teams of swimmers and environmentalists who could resist the swift waters and dislodge the debris. Cleanup squads were soon working 24 hours a day to keep up with the increase in pollution. And while not all the debris or dead fish could be removed from the river, the villagers felt they were doing well in cleaning up as much as they could. Indeed, the village priest even blessed them in their work, and life in the village continued on that basis for many months. One day, however, a young girl was playing by the side of the river and noticed the pollution. She looked off in the distance and then turned to her grandfather, asking where all of the waste was coming from. Her grandfather shrugged and said, "Upriver somewhere, I guess." The little girl responded, "Well, let's organize a team to head upstream and find out who's throwing all the trash into the river in the first place." They brought that idea to the village elders, but the elders said things like, "But if we were to go upstream, who would stay here to take care of our rescue operation? And we need everyone concerned here. We need all our villagers here doing this work. Don't be ridiculous. It's too hard to go upstream." The girl cried out, "But don't you see? If we find out who's polluting the river, we can stop the problem, and no fish will die." The elders responded, saying, "It is too risky, and we need all the help we can get right here." So the number of fish found floating in the river continued to rise, and the amount of pollution in the river just continued to increase. Several days later, though, the young girl decided to go upstream to find the source of the corruption. Upstream, she found a mountain of trash from the building of a nearby village. And that mountain of trash was releasing chemicals into the once beautiful river and blocking up the waterways. The girl smiled to herself and began to remove as much of the pollution as she could. And as she dealt with the source of the pollution upstream, the river downstream returned to normal, much to the joy of the other villagers. Now, our society might say that the love in this story shows up downstream, where the whole village was working to remove the debris and clean up the river. But our faith tells us that in this story, liberating love is upstream, and like a magnet, it pulls us upstream. In other words, love calls us to fight the system creating a problem, where the trash is being thrown in, not just the symptoms of the problem, the trash at the bottom of the river. Our faith reminds us that it is not enough to just pull trash and debris out of the river, but as Unitarian Universalists, we are called to go upstream and find the source of the problem. And now, please join in singing our children to their religious exploration groups.
So let us join together now in a time of prayerful meditation. Howard Thurman was a spiritual guide for many in the civil rights movement, including Martin Luther King Jr. Thurman seemed to express in his prayers a longing for congruency and a striving for wholeness. This prayer is adapted from one of Thurman's meditations. And following this meditation, we'll have a time of shared silence. During that time, you may want to think of those places in your own life that seek healing, those concerns and joys that you might have for loved ones or others in our world. Following that silence, there'll be an opportunity to share those who would like to online or in the sanctuary. So in this spirit of prayer, I use these words adapted from Howard Thurman. Lord, I want to be more holy in my mind. My thoughts tend ever to be divisive and scattered. In so many ways, my mind is a house divided, and the conflicts rage up and down all my corridors. I need wholeness. Oh, that my mind may be stilled by thy holy hush, Lord. I want to be holy in my mind. Lord, I want to be more holy in my words. Words are my common tools of communication. All that many know of me are the words used as connecting links between my inward parts and theirs. The temptation is ever to use words as instruments of confusion and disorder. Words can sting, enrage, humiliate. Words, oh, that thy holy quiet may invade my words, that they may heal, bless, and make whole the bruised, broken, and fearful ones. Lord, I want to be more holy in my words. Lord, I want to be more holy in my heart. Here is the citadel of all my desiring, where my hopes are born and all the deep resolutions of my spirit take wings. My fears are nourished, and all my hates are nurtured. Here my loves are cherished, and all the deep hunger of my spirit is honored, without quivering and without shock. In my heart, above all else, let thy love and integrity envelop me until my love is perfected and the last vestige of my desiring is no longer in conflict with thy spirit, with thy love. Lord, I want to be more holy in my heart. So let us join now in a time of shared silence. Some time to honor our connections with one another. All the places in which what is happening in another's life also impacts our own. So we take this time to recognize first whatever concerns we might have or sorrows we might be holding in our own heart for someone else or for ourselves or for our world. So let us attend to those concerns or sorrows and speak them aloud in this room, if you care to do so, or write them in the chat. May we honor our holy connection with one another. May we send love. May we be a presence, a healing presence and compassion in those lives where we can make a difference by our love and by our compassion. What joys might you have today? What joys might you share with this connected community this morning? Speak a little louder. Okay. sunshine. May all whose names were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day as we join together now in our musical meditation. Thanks for going along with the yarn game this morning. There's a thing actually called messy church, and we had an experience of that today, just a little messiness. But hopefully those visible threads allow us to really honor all the invisible threads that connect us to one another. On Friday, a group of children from the Educational Learning Center, the preschool that rents its space from us, came to the office and asked the church member volunteer helping out that morning if they could wash the windows just outside our office area for their Martin Luther King Day of service. Of course, said Dale. Of course, any of us would say to this offer, to serve in some concrete ways by a group of preschoolers. How wonderful that the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. is being celebrated in so many ways in our country this weekend, including these days of service. There will be speeches shared from Martin Luther King's remarkable life. There will be speeches about Martin Luther King and ways to try to make sense of his devotion to nonviolent resistance in the face of racial injustice. Some will also focus on his explicit commitment later in his life to economic injustice and peace. And when all is said and done, what matters most, I believe, is that his legacy is propelled into service, into explicit actions to demonstrate his legacy. His legacy will be propelled into daily actions to perpetuate his theology that God is in action through you and that we are embodied in action together towards the overall aim of beloved community. Martin Luther King Jr. answered a call toward more justice in response to the blatant, untampered, and outrageous oppression of people of African descent in the country at his time. He had a mountaintop vision that compelled him to take on the role that he did. He also had a spiritual understanding about life and the human being. It was this understanding that caused him to align with that spiritual force to mobilize himself and others to address unspeakable generations of racial injustice. I like knowing that that force is continuing to our day in acts of service, even among preschoolers, and in many other ways across this country, as a way to embody his understanding that it is in action that liberating love transforms the world. Now, what was that spiritual understanding that Martin Luther King had? King shared it in his speech before the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly that I used as part of our call to worship this morning, that all life is interrelated, and somehow we are all tied together, connected to one another. For some strange reason, he said, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, and you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. This would be an understanding that would compel him and propel him to face those who would divide humans into categories and then create hierarchies among those categories. This interrelated worldview was a compelling understanding of the nature of reality that stands diametrically opposed to a system where some were considered more than and others considered less than. It was this understanding of the interrelated structure of all of reality, our interrelatedness, that would give him an alternative view from the mechanistic view of the material world and the hierarchical understandings of the social world that contribute to the exploitation of natural resources and of people, and an abuse of power and the continual abuse of our earth. Isabel Wilkerson has called this hierarchical worldview a caste system. And the subtitle of her book, Caste, is the origin of our discontents. Caste is a view in which there is a granting or a withholding of respect or status or honor or attention or privileges or resources, benefit of the doubt and human kindness to someone on the basis of their perceived rank or standing in the hierarchy. The alternative understanding of interrelatedness gave King enough of a vision to see through the lies of this caste system in America. No matter how many adherents it had, no matter how strongly it was reinforced through actual restrictive laws and oppressive practices and customs. In his letters from a Birmingham jail, King asserts again this guiding view that in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. King's understanding of this interconnectedness, of course, was rooted in his Christian faith that saw the church as members all as part of the one body of Christ, saw all people as children of the same God, envisioned a kingdom of God in which the realization of the gospel ideals of love and justice would be manifest in the real world, here and now. King's theological study also brought him into contact with those who defined further what they called a beloved community. Theologians of his time began to critically understand that although the official church may have been compromised from the Constantinian era where the church became the official religion of the empire, and although the official church of his time actually collaborated with the systems, the governmental systems of racial oppression, from the perspective of King and other Christian theologians, this did not diminish the possibility of a beloved community, but instead it compelled the work towards making this possibility a reality. King was the great synthesizer of ideas about the beloved community, and he not only brought this more into the consciousness of others, but also made it operational, made it doable through the strategies of nonviolent protest that galvanized many during the civil rights movement to see that their resistance to the empire of racism and the laws of Jim Crow could bring it down, and to see that they could embody that inescapable network of mutuality through their common work and struggle. Enriching and broadening King's understanding and tactics to bringing about the beloved community were the transmissions of wisdom and insight he also received from Gandhi in India and from a young Vietnamese Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. Gandhi, as you may know, already know, I'm sure, was the one who transmitted this understanding of nonviolent protest to King and Coretta Scott King in their visit to India, which was encouraged by King's mentor, Howard Thurman, who also had met with Gandhi. There they saw actually demonstrated the power of nonviolent resistance and what it had done for those who had been oppressed in the caste system and by the rule of the British. Gandhi called this active resistance satyagraha, or life force, soul force, or love force. The power of that force instilled King as well to transmit that force of nonviolent resistance to others, to make a real change to the oppressive systems of his time. Mark Andros documents in his book, Brothers in the Beloved Community, the friendship of Thich Nhat Hanh and Martin Luther King Jr., and he narrates that King also was impacted by his conversations and letters with the Buddhist monk, who was an advocate for peace in the Vietnam War, his country of origin. Thich Nhat Hanh advocated for an engaged Buddhism that brought Buddhists into direct engagement with the sufferings of the world, in service to the poor and the oppressed, and the advocating for peace in the world. It was Hanh who Andres suspected helped King to further refine his understanding of the interrelated universe as a motive for acting for justice. As a young monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, as Andres states, learned the main tenets of Mahayana Buddhism, that all of life is interconnected and that there are great beings who within the web of life convey compassion to all other beings, helping to free them from delusion and needless suffering. These light-filled beings are called bodhisattvas. Han actually told King that he was considered a bodhisattva among his monks in Vietnam. King, as you may know, nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for the Nobel Prize in 1967. He made that nomination in a public letter, which was against the rules of the Nobel Prize. And so no prize was given that year, and we can only speculate why. The mutuality of their relationship, King and Thich Nhat Hanh, helped them each to hone an understanding of beloved community as the ultimate goal of the strategies of nonviolent direct action and protest. It was the vision that guided and propelled and compelled them and lured them. For Hanh, this aim of beloved community also included the practice of meditation that could serve to help bring about an inner transformation necessary for compassionate action towards all and towards all of life. Thich Nhat Hanh also started a university, a school of social work in Vietnam, meditation centers around the world, and many other projects to embody his view of an engaged Buddhism, to perpetuate his understanding of cultivating a beloved community at many different levels and ways of service. In a joint letter following the meeting that King and Thich Nhat Hanh had in Chicago in 1966, they made a connection to what was happening in Vietnam at the time and what was happening in Birmingham and Selma. In that letter, they state, "We also believe that the struggles for equality and freedom in Birmingham, Selma, and Chicago, as in Hue, Da Nang, and Saigon, are aimed not at the domination of one people by another. They are aimed at self-determination, peaceful social change, and a better life for all human beings. We join in the plea, do not kill man, do not kill the human, even in man's name. Please kill the real enemies of man, which are present everywhere in our very hearts and minds." Now, our current list of sources of our Unitarian Universalist living tradition includes this: words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and transforming love. And I would include King and Thich Nhat Hanh as part of those prophetic people. Our current principle acknowledges the powers and structures of evil that need to be confronted, and love has a role in this confrontation. The proposed new guiding values for Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, called Article 2. How many of you have heard just a little bit about that? Okay. All right. Includes this statement: love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Now, whether we adopt these proposed new principles or not, love has been and will continue to be what guides us. From our Universalist heritage, we carry forward an understanding that divine love is indivisible and available to all. That love is a power that redeems. That love is a power that transforms. Martin Luther King Jr. provides us with this understanding that love must be embodied as a beloved community in the world where all have a place at the table. So as we celebrate Martin Luther King Day this year, I think it's a time for a reckoning and a renewal of his broader vision and his call, his wider call to beloved community. Reverend Otis Moss III, an African-American minister of a United Church of Christ, Afrocentric congregation in Chicago, states, "I often hear Dr. King invoked today in the narrowest ways as a fighter for African Americans, a kind of tribal identity politician. I also hear him cast as a kind of cheerleader, congratulating Americans for no longer judging people by the color of their skin. However, Dr. King only looked forward to the day when that would be true." Moss points out, in fact, that Dr. King, as early as 1958, stated, and I quote, "Poor whites are exploited just as much as African Americans." Once his work for defeating Jim Crow and voting rights had culminated, his work had reached a place of fruition in which he turned his attention to a national nonviolent war for economic justice and economic fairness. He stated the inseparable twin of racial injustice is economic injustice. Thus, this work for beloved community continued to expand to help impoverished people everywhere. And this work is continued, as perhaps many of you know, in the contemporary Poor People's Campaign of Reverend William Barber and others. Otis Moss III offers a perspective that I think is helpful in our contemporary time. He says, in this time of systematic attempt to dismantle Dr. King's tradition of love linked to justice, with all it has accomplished, too many conservatives and liberals alike have fallen into parallel mistakes. On the left, too often we acknowledge the blues but leave out the gospel, the promise of the better world that we seek to create. So the blues lead only to despair and angry nihilism that, as the conservative columnist David Brooks has written, takes a negative view of American history and its achievements, seeing only, quote, tales of genocide, slavery, oppression, and segregation. And on the right, too often, we deny the blues of this national midnight. We respond to any news of injustice by attacking the messengers, calling them unpatriotic. We attack the message by calling it fake news. We denigrate the experts who have knowledge and the artists who have the wisdom to show us how we live and how we actually fall short. Moss goes on to critique both the right and the left for their denial and their despair. He says that they are both ways to avoid wrestling with the spiritual challenges of our time. And I love this metaphor that Moss gives of the work that we need to do to bring about the beloved community. It's one that he calls the politics of jazz. And I want to share this metaphor from his writing with you as I conclude my reflections with you this morning. Moss says, one of jazz's unique elements is the musician's ability to express individuality within a tightly disciplined group. Jazz takes instruments that traditionally did not play together, like the saxophone, the piano, the trap drum, and the bass. What am I saying wrong? The bass. I misspelled it. And throws them into the mix. Jazz composition dares to bring together these diverse instruments, cultural histories, and musical perspectives to play together, sharing the same melody, creating something out of our varied and sometimes ugly histories that is unquestionably beautiful. Jazz models a collective combination of love and the struggle for justice, because each instrument is saying to the other, you have value, we all have value, and none of us is greater than the other. This translates into, we recognize your humanity. You may not sound like me, yet we are working together on the same themes. In jazz politics, we define ourselves not by superiority to some and denigrate others, but how we use the gifts we were given to contribute to the community that we share. In jazz, it is self-evident that all are created equal. In jazz, you can hear, he says, the sound of what Dr. King called the beloved community. And so, for this Martin Luther King Day weekend, may we recognize the importance of embodying the beloved community, of being part of that strong force of love and bringing it forward. And may we remember to use the gifts we were given to contribute to the beloved community that we all share. And now we'll watch a quick video of some ways in which we can live out this beloved community.
Making positive, inclusive community change means having difficult conversations. Here are 5 big ideas to help you keep moving forward together. First, start with hunger. What are we all hungry for? To be heard, to be understood, to be respected. When these hungers are met, most of us can collaborate productively. Kind-hearted questions, equal speaking time, and expressions of understanding and appreciation help us get the nourishment we need. Second, welcome conflict as an opportunity. Conflict is energy, and energy can be transformed. Every day, our bodies transform chemical energy into kinetic energy. Likewise, conflict is an opportunity to better appreciate the lifetime of experience another person brings to the table, and use that appreciative energy to make progress. The third big idea is compassionate identification. When we have sympathy for someone, we feel sorry for them from afar. But compassion bridges the gap. When we identify with one another, we connect something in our experience with something in theirs. This builds trust and rapport. The fourth big idea is perceptive understanding. It's tempting to have a conversation as if the goal is to win or convince. A better goal is to understand. Sometimes, what seems like disagreement is really just 2 ways of looking at the same thing. And remember, disagreement in one area can coexist quite nicely with agreement in another. The fifth big idea is practical love. Many people think of love as something we feel, but as Martin Luther King Jr. once put it, love is also a practical form of strength and power. So be strong, be kind, and be loving. Difficult conversations are a part of moving forward together. Start with hunger, welcome conflict, compassionately identify with one another, let understanding be your goal, and trust the practical power of love. All for the sake of positive, inclusive community change. We've got this.
So, how can you ensure that our beloved community here at First Unitarian will grow and thrive? By donating your time, talent, and dollars. We have volunteers that make weekly hikes, yoga, meditation, lost my spot, happen for our members and outside community, for example. And also our very popular vegan potlucks. We have volunteers who are getting the word out via social media that we have this beloved community, and other volunteers who greet those who decide to check us out. What is something that would energize you to become more active with the church? We could always use more hands for what we're already doing, but think of what more we could offer. Maybe there are others who would like to help you create something new. You can talk to Reverend Larry, our music director, Kathy Harris, our director of religious exploration, Catherine Williamson, or other church members to figure out how you can add your energy to our beloved community. But for now, during the offertory music, there will be information about how to make a financial donation, including dropping it in the baskets at the back of the sanctuary at the end of the service. And following the service today at noon, our beloved community will have a discussion in the parish hall on the latest proposals for the revision of the UU principles that will be voted on at the General Assembly. All are invited to participate, and childcare will be provided in room 29. So now please join me in dedicating our offering. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these, our offerings.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head, I see angels in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
As we extinguish this chalice, I'll be reading the quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s acceptance speech of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds, and our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, we will know that we are living in the creative turmoil of a genuine civilization struggling to be born.
A special thank you to our singers today. They did just a wonderful job. It's great to hear that. How many of you picked up a blue flyer when you came in today that outlines the events of this week at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington? This is a poll. Okay, this is a new thing, but you'll find it at the doors on Sunday, a blue flyer that outlines what's happening this week at our congregation. So please pick that up, share it with a friend, and don't keep the good news just to yourself. All right. If you're new to us today, you'll notice that there's someone in our congregation who's wearing a yellow cape. Think of sunshine and warmth, and she's available to interact with you and talk about our congregation, as well as any other member here that I've just deputized to be that kind of welcoming presence to you as well. We do have a coffee hour with some treats and coffee, tea, water, and other beverages following the service. And as Edris mentioned, around noon, we're beginning the conversation for those who want to participate in it about the Article 2 proposed revisions. So our benediction is from Brian Wren. Love lifts the hopes that force and fear have beaten down. Love breaks the chains and gives us strength to stand our ground. Love makes a bridge that winds may shake yet not destroy. Love carries faith through life and death to endless joy. Let's rise as you're willing or able in body or spirit to sing Answering the Call of Love 1014, and the words will also appear on the screen.
The truth in our hearts is our God.